Hi, मैं हिमा दास, स्प्रिंटर एंड करंट इंडियन रिकॉर्ड होल्डर इन 400 मीटर। मैं ये मानती हूँ कि वातावरण के साथ हम सभी लोगों को एडजस्ट करना चाहिए। लॉकडाउन के दौरान मैंने अपने फिटनेस को और डाइट को काफ़ी ख्याल रखा ताकि मेरा स्किल अच्छी रहे, फिट रहे, इम्यून रहे।
Hi, I am Mohammad Nasriya, sprinter and current national record in 400 meter. I am positive that the sports will make comeback after this pandemic, and therefore advise all my fellow athletes to continue putting their hard work preparation for the training.
Hello everyone. So finally we are getting sports back on track, and as an athlete I'm really very excited and looking forward because we've been in such a situation where everything has come to a standstill, and everyone was at home doing nothing, and being a sports person, being an athlete, it was really hard for us to stay home without traveling or without any tournaments. So I think it's really good that now things have been changing and we've started getting back on track, and it's a good thing for every athlete because we can come back and focus on our sport and play the sport. So I'm really very happy and really looking forward for it.
Hi guys, this is Smriti Mandana, and I think there's definitely a headroom available to develop women's cricket in India, and I think the easiest way to develop is to reach the grassroots level, try to get that passion in young girls, try to give them better facilities and good skill training from at that young age. So I think there'll be a lot of interest, and then we'll be able to grow women's cricket overall and grow the interest of young girls to play cricket or want to be a cricketer much more, and we'll get a lot of more girls coming through the ranks. So yeah, if we want to take the game to the next level in India, I think this is the easiest way to do it, and I think we all should work towards that.
Hi everyone, this is Anjum Modgil. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. Like everyone knows, COVID-19 pandemic hit the world and every person in the world really hard. And same like the sports industry, there were many events getting cancelled or postponed. So, this pandemic, gave us an opportunity to look into things apart from the field we are into it. So it gave me, opportunity to recover, which I think was much required for everyone, to spend time with the family, to take our creative side out and to find out what you can explore more about yourself. And yes, so that's how I spent most of my lockdown: painting, working on my online courses for my mental health, doing physical training at home, having unique ideas to, exercise, staying at home.
नमस्कार, मैं हूं द्वितीय चंद अर्जुन अवाड़ी। मैं बिलीव करती हूँ जो अच्छा स्पोर्ट्स करता है इनका शरीर बहुत अच्छा रहता है और खुद सुस्त रहता है और बाकी परिवार लोग को सुस्त रखने की कोशिश करता है। मैं ये मानती हूँ जो स्पोर्ट्स करेगा जिंदगी भर कभी बीमार नहीं होगा। जैसे मैं अभी तक मैं कोई बड़ा बीमारी का सामना नहीं किया है। मैं स्पोर्ट्स करती हूँ, इसलिए मैं खुद को सुस्त रखती हूँ और खुद को फिट रखती हूँ।
Hi, I am Jensen Johnson, middle distance runner, national record holder in 1500 meter race and gold medalist in. Confident that sports will restart across all categories. I am also putting special attention to make sure my mental state is always on point.
Hello, I am Neeraj Chopra, gold medal winner at the 2018 Asian Games in javelin throw and current national record holder. I look forward to seeing sports make a comeback, and I am optimistic about the future of sports.
Hello. Hi, Richard. Can you hear me? It's Kate. And you're on mute. So there should be an icon on the left. Rich. I think Rich is having problems with his.
I can't hear you. I don't know if you.
Can you hear me?
No.
Yes, there you go. Perfect.
All right. So I've had to take my earphones off because it won't work without them. So I don't know. I had this problem before. Well, okay. I think it just might be the way I've come in. I might try and log out and come back in again.
Yeah. Did you see the mute button on the left-hand side? Just to make sure you can see that.
I haven't got. No, I can't see that on the left. I've just got on my.
From my screen, it's bottom left. There's a start video, a mute icon.
Right at the bottom, I've got mute. So this is me not on mute. So can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
All right. I might just try and come back in though, because I see if I can get my earphones. Okay.
Kate.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? What can you see? What can you see on the screen? I can just see this a media.
Yeah, it's a video. Yeah, I think they've got it on hold. So the blue panel you can see, that's where the host comes on. So I was watching them. Did you see the previous session?
No, I haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, so there was a host there with a microphone on the blue screen.
Okay. There's a few people. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Hi. I work with Rich Garlick at the Premier League. I'm just holding, waiting for him to join back in. So I thought I'd say hello.
All right, great. Nice to meet you.
And you.
Manu.
Hey, Scott.
How are you, my friend?
Good, good. Long while.
How's it been?
Been all right. I can see Anil joining us now.
Hi. Hi. Oh, hi, Manu. How are you?
Very well. Scott, you well?
Yeah. Right now I am. It's day to day, as you know, in the world we're in. But right now it's all good.
Yeah. I think Richard's just joined in.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Hi.
Hi, Richard.
Good morning, everyone.
Scott, you're still in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, I thought you might be in Beijing at the Congress.
You know, now Hong Kong has a 21-day hotel room quarantine. It's not a good time to leave because it's very hard to come back.
Yeah. I'm actually currently quarantining in my house after getting 2 jabs done because somebody in my family tested positive 10 days post the second jab.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
They doing okay now?
Yeah, I think the one hypothesis, which at least in our case seems to have worked, is the fact that the severity of the illness is far less pronounced. So, you know, I think on day 4 it seems to be kind of tapering down, which usually would have been day 9, day 10. So, but it's just ironical, right? We lasted a year without that and thought we were kind of pretty good with 2 vaccines in.
That's when you get it.
And then got it. So just shows you the world we are in.
Yeah, my son just had it. He's in at university in the US, and so he got it, but he only had a couple of days where he felt bad, and then after that he was back to normal.
Yeah. I think that's Meha, if I'm not wrong. Richard, you guys are doing pretty decently on the vaccination in UK, or how's it going?
Yeah, quite well, amazing, really, I have to say, given the problems that we had with kind of test and trace and things like that. The vaccines have really gone well. We're coming up to 21 million, which is kind of like at least a quarter of the population. We're now getting, I think they're doing it age group, so the older ones went first, and I think we're down to the 50 and above at the moment, and then by the middle of April we'll be at the 40s. So anybody over the age of 40 will get it. So yeah, it's tremendous. Really, doesn't seem to be letting up. We're doing about somewhere between 300 to 400,000 tests, vaccines a day.
Oh wow!
Every day.
Yeah.
And this is 2 jabs or 1 jab?
It's well, yeah, it's a 2 jab. We've got the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca one, which are the main 2 jabs that we're using. But I think we're at 21 million with first jab and about just over 1 million with the second jab. So there's a bit of a gap, but they're gradually getting up.
I was just reading that India did 1 million yesterday.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's actually it seems to be that it's now quite widely available and people are widely choosing to do it. But still, in the context of 1 billion people, they'll certainly have to scale up beyond that 1 million, I'm sure. But yeah, it started well, Manu, as you may be aware.
Yeah, 1.3 billion, the last I heard. Yeah, true. You know, I'm on the other side of the fence, as I was sharing with you. This is the post-vaccination scenario, which I must say, the first time I heard of it, you know, when the test result came positive, it did absolutely shock and surprise me. I thought we were kind of done.
Yeah, I think it's a bit scary. So.
It is, and you know, Scott, literally a year from now, a year back, maybe exactly to 3 days, I was in MCG and we had 86,000 people for a women's final on 8th of March on the Women's Day.
Yeah.
And the world kind of shaped out a lot different after that.
It's been a year, right? Yeah.
That's the timeline. A year ago was an All-Star in Chicago, and then it was just a few days, or about 360 days from when Rudy Gobert tested positive, and we had to suspend the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard, say hi to Paul and Richard if you see them, and hope they're doing well.
Will do. We're still in lockdown here in the UK, so we're not back in the office. So although we see each other on Zoom and Teams and meetings like this a lot, we haven't actually been back in the office really since before in December. So it's been tricky.
Okay. We've actually on that front maybe done well. Our office has been on since June last year, and we've had basically 2 circuit breakers of, I think, a week each time.
Okay. No, we've gone from like one lockdown chunk of time to another lockdown, and the last lockdown was in December, and it's starting to free up. So as of Monday, all the schools are going back in the UK.
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, and then gradually there's like a roadmap on the way out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to the infection rates once the schools go back, because at the moment we're only returning about 6,500 positive tests across the UK a day at the moment, which is really, really low. But that's because everything is locked down at the moment.
Yeah, India seems to be in the midst of a second spike. Yesterday was some close to 20,000 cases. So
your fellow countrymen from both Richard and Anil, your country, were responsible for giving us a lot many after they left back post Christmas and New Year.
I heard that, Manu. Yeah, Dubai got severely hit after New Year, right?
Yeah, we got quite badly actually hammered on that.
I think Miha, I can't hear Miha if you're speaking.
Yeah, no, I can't hear either.
Miha, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Meha, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I think they're trying to fix it. I can see somebody with me, huh? I'll just text her in any case.
Meha, we can't hear you.
Oh, hi, Sachin. Hi, Sachin.
Good to see you. Good to see you. So welcome to all the
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Meha.
We can.
Yeah, we can.
Finally.
Okay.
So I could see that you all were interacting amongst each other, and I've been told here that in this session it would be nice if I get all of you to talk to each other. I didn't think that it would be possible given that we have this limitation of, being on this on a Zoom call or whatever it is, Hive call. But I'll try my best to make this as conversational and, just make it informative for everybody. The tricky part is that they've given me an after lunch session. You know how after lunch sessions can get. So we'll do the best that we can.
Yes,
But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you, Meha. Thank you. We are looking forward to that interesting post-lunch session that's going to happen, getting sports back on track. Thank you. And before we begin the next panel discussion, would like to reiterate to all our viewers, we do have a Q&A session at the end of the panel discussion. So request to please type your questions in the Q&A box, mentioning first whom you want to address it to, then your name and the organization that you belong to, for us to address the questions to the respective individual. With that, we begin the panel discussion on getting sports back on track with the global frontrunners of restarting sports events and leagues. And our panelists are, please welcome Mr. Richard Garlick, Director of Football Premier League. He oversees football operations, football relations, youth development, coaching, and young player education. Before taking up the Premier League role, he spent 8 years at English football club West Bromwich Albion FC. Also, welcome Mr. Manu Soni, CEO, International Cricket Council. Brings with him 22 years of outstanding commercial experience and leads the delivery of the new global growth strategy for the game. He has proven success in a number of leadership roles in both sport and broadcasting. Since 2012, he has been an independent director and member of the Audit Committee of Manchester United PLC. He's also a member of the Global Leadership Network Young Presidents Organization and served on the steering committee of the 28th Southeast Asian Games. Welcome, Mr. Manuswani. Mr. Scott Levy, Executive Vice President and Managing Director, NBA Asia. He oversees development and expansion of NBA's branding and basketball initiatives in Asia, excluding Greater China. He also directs all of NBA Asia's business groups, including media distribution. He has competed in multi-sport and adventure races, including the New York Marathon, Oxfam Japan Trail Walker, and many triathlons, raising funds for Fred's team and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Welcome, sir. Also, we have with us Mr. Anil Jayaraj, Head of Sales, Star Sports. He has over 22 years of marketing, sales, and business development experience in B2C as well as B2B businesses in India, the UK, and global teams. He has successfully led teams across MNCs as well as family-run organizations. He has been with Star Sports since March 2015 as Executive Vice President. Prior to this, he has been in senior roles with Pidilite, Castrol, and BP. He is an MBA in marketing and also holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. He's a passionate follower of sports and also mentors startups during his spare time. And now would like to welcome Ms. Meha Bharadwaj, Alter, senior journalist and sports presenter, for moderating this session. She is an award-winning television anchor and producer with over a decade of experience with leading Hindi and English channels, a leader in content creation, scripting, editing, voiceover, and anchoring. She's anchored various sports bulletins and special shows with a focused understanding of Indian sports. Now, before I hand it over to Ms. Meha, a gentle reminder once again to all our viewers to send in their questions in the Q&A section, which is on the right top corner of your screen, mentioning whom you want to address the question to and your name and the organization's name that you belong to and the question. Also, Meha, request to please click on the Q&A option section and to view the questions when you begin the Q&A session. Thank you, and it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Sachin, and hello and a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Neha Bharadwaj, and this session is about getting sport back on track. And it is important that we talk about it, considering the kind of pandemic that we find ourselves in. So I have what I can call a kick-ass lineup today. These gentlemen know more than a thing or two about how to get sports back on track. They've done it, and they've done it successfully. They've been already introduced, but I'd again take a moment to just introduce them to you. There is Mr. Richard Garlick, as we said, Director of Football, Premier League. Mr. Manu Sani, he's the CEO of the ICC. Scott Levy, he is the EVP and Managing Director, NBA Asia. And then there is Mr. Anil Jayaraj, who is the Head of Sales, Star Sports. So not only do we have a panel that represents the top 3 sporting leagues and association in the world, and they have just basically, what they've shown is how you can get sports back on track in the way NBA has done it with their bio bubble, the way Premier League has done it with Project Restart. But with that, we also have a broadcaster, somebody who can tell us what is their point of view and how it has been for them, what are the challenges that broadcasters have faced during this pandemic. So let me begin then this session with Mr. Manu Sani, sir. I know that some people might just say, why do you have to begin with cricket? I mean, that's so cliche, but I'll do it nevertheless because there is an interesting match going on between India and England. And for the first time, it looks like England are looking good after that first test match. So, okay, Mr. Sani, we've seen what happened with the pandemic and the cancellation and postponement of events. One of the biggest events for cricket being the T20 World Cup, Men's Cricket World Cup. But then we saw the return of cricket, and it started with England, West Indies, went on to England, Pakistan, and then the IPL. What was that journey like for cricket and for international tournaments, if you can just take us through it?
Thank you, Meher. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all the listeners who are dialing into my fellow panelists, and thank you for organizing this. I was just sharing it before this call with a few of my fellow panelists that literally a year from now, back on the 8th of March, we had 86,174 fans at the MCG there for a match between the home team Australia and India, who had been undefeated till that particular match. The largest ever crowd for a women's cricket game there. And little did I know on 8th of March that the coming months would be a lot more different than what all of us had seen prior to that. I think what the year has basically also taught us, Neha, is a lot of resilience in just the sheer value of how do we step back, just first understand what are the critical aspects of things that need to be done, and then look at what are the options available to us. And I think the first step for us was to get a proper sense in terms of where we were and develop guidelines using enough scientific evidence and advice that we got from various people in terms of what are the next steps and how do we really ensure the safety and security of all the stakeholders in the sport. That kind of became the centerpiece of really everybody's focus at that particular point in time. We then subsequently in May developed guidelines, which we then released cricket. With a view of trying to see in countries which were opening up, what are the various things that need to be done or guidelines that need to be followed to ensure that we do maintain the safety and the security of the people playing at the same time can enjoy the sport. I think from our perspective, the biggest learning came first from on an international level from ECB, when we had West Indies, Pakistan, and Ireland all visiting England. And I think that kind of provided with a lot of learnings. I'm sure both Richard and Scott will agree with me. One of the biggest positives that has come out of the last 12 months has been the ability of all federations to engage a lot more in learning from each other. What are the best practices? What are the things to avoid? So that all of us can learn from each other and try and make sports happen for billions of fans across the world. And that to me has really been, one of the biggest positives that has come out, the sheer communication, engagement between people within the sport or your sport and people outside that sport in just kind of putting a helping hand. This is what we've learned. Try and use it so that you can ensure, safety and security of your stakeholders. We did have to move our World Cup in India, in Australia. But in hindsight, both that and moving our Women's World Cup in New Zealand from 2021 to 2022 seem to have been the right decisions, making sure that the integrity of the game was not compromised and the safety and security of all the stakeholders was not compromised. So still a huge learning curve, and every day is a big learning. I think kudos to ECB, BCCI, who is right now, as you said, conducting test matches, which is a big one, which will be followed by IPL in India, and then we have the World Test Championship in UK. So looking forward to that, but a big learning for everybody, and that's really where we are from a cricket perspective. Meha, you're on mute.
Technology. Yes, big learning for everybody, big learning for me to unmute myself every time I ask a question. But Mr. Levy, if I could come to you, sir, NBA and the bio bubble, the Disney bubble, as it was called, that in itself is as successful a story as LA Lakers picking up the 17th title, right? I mean, in that bubble, 172 games were conducted over 2.5 months, and not a single player, staffer, nobody from the league was tested positive. I mean, from the conceptualization to its execution, what went through it?
Thank you, Miha, and good afternoon to everyone. As Manu said, it's about a year ago. For us, it was on March 11th when one of our players tested positive moments before the tip-off of a game in Oklahoma City. And when we came to the decision to postpone the season with public health experts and infectious disease specialists, they were continuing to try to forecast what was going to happen 1, 2, 3 months down the road. Even now, there are so many unknowns, but if you go back to that period of time, this had never been done before. We didn't know if it was even possible to create an environment that was truly safe for our players and our employees. So the idea of a bubble, it first started to gain traction about in April, as it became evident that we would need to create something of a controlled environment to have any hope of completing the 2019-20 season. So, in consultation with public health experts, infectious disease specialists, government authorities, we developed extensive health and safety protocols that were informed by data, not by date. And we learned how the virus spreads. We promoted best practices to prevent and contain the transmissions. And our focus was protecting not just the players, but everyone contributing to the resumption of the season. And as Manu said, it was absolutely a community effort. We worked very closely with the other U.S. sports leagues, and we have shared our protocols with other leagues and federations all around the world. Bringing sport back has been a community effort, and we're really happy to be participating in that. So some of the elements that we added, included daily testing, face coverings for our players and our coaches, individual seating to limit interaction, and even things on the court, norms such as players wiping the ball with their jerseys or unnecessarily touching their mouth guards. It required a big change. And we knew it would require enormous sacrifice from everyone involved in this for this to work, including the players, coaches, team, and the league staff. And we're incredibly pleased and lucky with the results. And we really thank everyone that was involved in helping us get there.
Mr. Garlick, when Jurgen Klopp, he picked up the Premier League trophy, he said, you make the best of what you can. And Premier League really did just that, because, your project Restart and the way you went about it, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because you did end up finishing a successful season, and that's another big successful story coming out of, sports and the field of sports. So just take us through what were the challenges that you faced, and, like Mr. Levy said, that they believed in creating a bubble. What went into, your standard operating procedures?
Certainly, thanks, Mihar, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to join you. In terms of I think the first thing to recognise is that these last 12 months has been a challenge for everyone, not just in football, but in all sports and in all walks of life. And it took an incredible team effort to get us to restart the season and also start this season as well and continue moving forward. And it took a big effort from a lot of people, players, managers, clubs, broadcasters, partners, everybody working together. And the key thing really from our point of view was that we were facing something that was completely unknown. As Scott said, it was an unprecedented occurrence. We didn't know much about the disease. We didn't know much about how the infections would happen. And so we were really led by the science and by the medical experts that we had. But right from the start, the clubs agreed, made a commitment that when it was safe to do so, we would restart the season. And that was the foundation of what we were going to do, keeping your eyes on the prize, which was to get the project Restart up and running and get moving. And we really went about, I think, as Manu and Scott said, collaborating with other sports, with other medical officers, with the government in the UK. We were in a fortunate position, being well resourced as a Premier League, that we were pushed to try and lead things forward. And we developed what I would describe as kind of like gold standards in terms of social distancing, in terms of hygiene, in terms of testing, in terms of screening. And then we were able to evolve our protocols as we move forward. And I think it's important to understand the way in which we went about this it was one step at a time. The first step was to get the players back training in small groups, social distancing, and then once everybody was comfortable and happy that was working, we moved on to the next step, which was competitive training. Then we moved on to the third step, which was play matches behind closed doors, and then finally we got fans back at the start of this season. So it was a stepped process all the way through. Reflect on what we were doing, check it was working, check the data, move forward to the next step. And in order to do that, we needed to bring everybody along with us. So there was a tremendous amount of information sharing. We met with the players, the captains, the managers, the unions, the medical officers. Every time we were at a step, we moved forward. We had Zoom calls like this. We got experts from the government. The Deputy Chief Medical Officer from the UK came on and answered questions to the players when they were concerned about would it impact on their families? What about, if they had underlying health conditions? We were able to answer every question. So we left no stone unturned, really, in terms of making sure that everybody felt comfortable that we were going to operate in a safe way. And a couple of things that added to that. One was the testing program that we put in place. We tested twice a week. And during that project restart, we only had 20 positive tests whilst we were playing out of something like 22,000 tests that we did. And we also put compliance officers in at every club to make sure that the protocols were being complied with. And that was a really important step. So there was somebody there every day checking at training that the screening was done, that people were social distancing, that people were doing what they should do, and you know, being brought to task if they weren't. So it gave a confidence that not only have we got these measures in place, but we were also monitoring and making sure that there was compliance with them. But as I say, I can't leave the fact that it was a real team effort. It involved everybody from the Premier League staff all the way through to the players and the managers and the broadcasters and all the partners. It was a real team effort.
Yes, and none of that would have been possible without the broadcasters. So let's get that point of view now, Mr. Jayaraj. Just talking about the time period when the lockdown began and there were cancellations and postponement for the broadcaster. I mean, you'd have to really dig in deep to find out strategies, ways to get viewers involved, to make sure they don't leave you. But at the same time, you know, there is the commercial side of it. What were the challenges that you faced? You're on mute, sir.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Neha, and everybody on the panel. Thank you for having me here. It's been quite an incredible sort of experience over the last 1 year. You know, one thing about calendars is it is extremely predictable, and the three gentlemen on the panel will tell you that almost every match for the next 3-4 years, everything is predictable, right? You know when something is starting, when something is ending. So this was quite unique, that things changed quite dramatically. Obviously, everybody puts in contingency plans, etc., but you then realize when something of this scale hits you, what's happening. I think our first reaction, to be honest, was we did panic a bit to say, look, what do we do? Sports business, at least as far as India goes, and quite parts of the world, is essentially live business, right? So if there is live sport, then advertisers are interested, commercials work, viewership works, etc. What we figured is that there's going to be nothing live for a while. So one of the first things we did, and thanks to Manu and his team at ICC, as well as BCCI, as well as a lot of the other rights holders, we managed to secure some rights to run historic events, historic games, India-Pakistan games, World Cup games, Kabaddi games, and football games. And that's what we did. That period of a couple of months gave us time to plan. And what we were also seeing from all broadcasters around the world, as well as the federations, that things need to be quite different. Our challenge was nobody had done it in India. Of course, the Premier League had done it, and other people had sort of done various things. So we had to do a lot of quick learning. Our challenges around the IPL were we had to create 5 bio bubbles, which were across different locations: Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Dubai, Mumbai. In Mumbai, we had 2 bubbles, and none of them could interact with each other. The other thing we also figured is, look, you know, viewers, when they're watching a game without having the audience in there, it was a very, very different experience. So we actually experimented with something which was quite unique and probably quite different from what was happening then. We actually introduced live sounds. So this is not just putting ambient sounds, but what we did is we examined about 500 games, and we exactly managed to pick out audios which, say, if Dhoni were to hit a 6 in Chennai, it's very different from Virat Kohli running a single in Bangalore. And we managed to put those sounds in real time. So much so that a lot of viewers actually called in to say, look, while I see no crowds, I see a lot of sounds. And that was quite unique. Commercially, the challenge is quite different because businesses were obviously not doing very well. Having said that, everybody knew IPL was going to be very, very big. And hence, it was really about building confidence in them to say that, look, this is going to be the biggest ever, and we'll do everything in our part. The reluctance in some of them would have been on the part of, look, uncertainty. What happens if things sort of stop once they start, etc. But it all went off quite well. So we're looking forward to resumption of full stadia, as you know, the Ahmedabad game currently has audiences. IPL in full flow would be great.
Mr. Sani, as a global body, the ICC, I mean, to align every national association, how was that like? Because you didn't have the same protocols for India as you had for New Zealand. So what were the challenges there for you?
So Meha, for us, the first thing that came was what were the protocols from staging a particular event and the sport perspective. So, for example, rules that meant that saliva could no longer be used to shine the ball, right? Which has been such a part of the cricketing as a sport. Rules that to ensure safety and of security of people, that we are not going to have neutral umpires coming around and officiating in international tournaments. So the first question was, what's the data that's coming? What are the virologists? What are the medical experts telling us that what needs to be done so that we can conduct a particular game, we can conduct the sport in a safe manner. And like I said to you, in May we came out with these guidelines, which were then issued across to all our members. And each of those members then used those along with some of the guidelines that were being given by their respective governments and local authorities. Because as you rightly said, it was a very dynamic situation. In some countries, the impact was extremely high. In some countries, it wasn't that high. So the guidelines that were given by ICC along with the local guidelines were then used to make sure that we are able to adhere to certain standards. And that really helped kickstart that. I think ECB did an amazing job of successfully doing the bio bubble. That was the first time where, a hotel within the stadium facility, along with facilities for the players to move around, kind of became the biggest advantage. Right, and you started creating these biosecure bubbles, which actually did not even need transportation to happen. So we did that first with 3 international series that happened, and then it kind of moved from there to Australia, where Indian team went, New Zealand, which basically then conducted it. But having said that, I must say that one of our learnings right now, and I'm sure my fellow colleagues on the panel will share that, is that it's still a very dynamic situation, right? It's a process of continuous learning, and nothing can be taken for granted. Just last week we played, games in New Zealand between Australia and New Zealand. Crowds were there, and then suddenly Auckland and a few other cities went into a lockdown, and we are playing a few games without that. Fortunately, in India, we played the first 2 test matches the first test match without crowds, and then crowds were allowed in. So it's a very dynamic situation. And one of the things that has become a clear reality is you need to not just have a plan A, plan B. You need to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. You need to be extremely adaptive, and it needs an effort from everybody. It needs the whole, as they say, it needs the whole village to come together, or the whole community to come together to basically make this happen. On one side, we have the fans. On the other side, we have the responsibility to all the stakeholders and the players and the squads and the teams. And it all needs to go hand in hand to make it happen. And I think, unfortunately, this is the way it will be for some time to come, as we continue to learn more about this virus and the various mutations and how things happen.
Right. Plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and if you cannot sustain it, what do you do? Mr. Levy, now there is no bubble for the NBA, and you see players testing positive. So as Mr. Soni said, it is a dynamic situation, but then how do you sustain a bubble what are the, how do you figure out the risk mitigation factors?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great example that Manu gave with saliva being a part of the game, and we didn't realize how many things happen during a game that potentially put the players in jeopardy or the fans in jeopardy until you start creating a bubble and say, all right, well, what are the things we have to protect for? Personally, I didn't realize how often I touched my face until Corona became a thing, and then you realize you're so conscious of it, and like, my God, every 30 seconds I have this urge to and now I got to go wash my hands and do that. So I think everybody has had to make this incredible adjustment in the way they conduct their lives, and for us, we have had cases, and we have had to adjust really every day, every week, to figure out can certain teams continue to play, how long should players, whether they've had exposure to a family member or to someone else that has, how long should they sit out while we're doing contact tracing, how many other players or coaches are impacted during a practice if somebody is identified. So we've had, I think, every scenario where we've had somebody sit out for a couple of days, somebody sit out for a week. We've had to shut teams down for periods of time. And when we launched our season this year in December, we only produced the schedule for the first half of the season, which actually is just ending right now. Our All-Star game will take place on Sunday. And that was because we knew that the schedule we were publishing in December was probably going to have significant modifications by the time we got to our All-Star game. And now we're taking those games that we've missed in the first half of the season and looking to reschedule them in the second half of the season. I mean, that may be the one advantage of not having fans in stadiums, is that you can move games around a little bit more easily when you're not trying to relocate 20,000 people who were scheduled to attend that game. And some games we've had to cancel, just an hour before the start of the game based on the timing of the testing coming back. So we're encouraged that the vaccine rollout is happening, that the testing is getting quicker and more accurate, and we're very confident that we're going to be able to move forward with the second half of our season and through the playoffs. And now we have more than half of our stadiums where we have some people in the arena. In many cases, it's very small, maybe 10% or 15%, but you really hear them when you hear the games being broadcast. You can hear almost everything that people are saying, and you really appreciate how important the fans are to the whole game experience, both from a viewer on television, but also to our players during the game. They really feed off the energy that the fans have, and everything's moving in the right direction. But as everybody's been saying, we're going to be hit by curveballs over the next few days, weeks, and months, and together, we'll work our way through it and keep sport going, and hopefully people will continue to be able to participate either through the viewing experience or in the arenas.
I've got to ask all you gentlemen as to what one of your biggest learnings has been with respect to this pandemic. I'll start with Mr. Garlick.
I think I probably look at it as a learning in how well we can all work together, how when there's a time of crisis, people come together and rise above it, or rise to the challenge, and and you kind of move away from looking after yourself to looking after the greater good of the league. We normally have 5 shareholders meetings a year in the Premier League, and we had 28 last year. So, you can just see everybody coming together, asking questions, wanting to work, as I say, from our case, to get things restarted. And it was really good to see everybody pulling together. And that's not just the clubs and the players and the managers, but the broadcasters as well, changing the schedules around, having to, the broadcasters have to work in the stadiums and they're subject to our protocols as well. So it was a real team effort of bringing everybody on board. And I think it just showed, from my point of view, what you can do. There's nothing's impossible, and everything is possible. We're putting spacecraft on Mars and things like that. So I think the idea that you can't do something that is now really in history now. I think from moving forward, we can show that from a sporting point of view, we can all come together and achieve great things. And as I say, getting Project Restart up and running and getting all the games away and restarting the season is great. And I think, as Scott was saying, that where we want to get to the next stage is getting all the fans back. Sport's not going to be back until all the fans are back.
Very well said. Sports not back until the fans are back. From the broadcasting point of view, Mr. Jayaraj, one big learning for you. You're mute again, sir. Mine has been technology, to be very honest. I still fail at it, so.
Sorry about that. I think I would say managing under extreme uncertainty is something that we've learned. And we've learned the hard way because, as I mentioned before, sport is amongst the most predictable sort of genres across any viewership. And actually, I just pick up what other panelists mentioned. One is about how to manage under extreme uncertainty. And the second is, our other big learning is, if there is a superordinate goal, which is to say that, look, we've got to get something going. It's incredible how many people come together to make that possible. Normally, it would be, you'd have various pulls and pushes around it. But in crisis and in times of extreme uncertainty, it is really heartening to see how people all come together and make it possible. So those have been our big learnings, I would say.
I think, Meha,
yes.
Sorry, just to echo what both Richard and Anil have said, I think for me personally, it is just reinforce the fact of the power of human resilience, right? Which kind of pretty much captures what we have all seen in all parts of the world, right? This was not about India or UK. This kind of pretty much was echoed throughout the world, across races, across communities. And that was amazing to kind of, just get your faith back in the human resilience.
Very well said, Mr. Soni. Mr. Levy, with NBA and all its financial might, you could have done that. What about some of the smaller leagues? How do they go about trying to get their league back on track?
Well, I think everybody has to prioritize the health and safety of their athletes and of their fans and of their staff. And it's very hard to be very specific about what each league might have to do. While we have shared our protocols and talked to many other leagues, everything is very unique. All these sports are very unique in the way that keeping your athletes safe is going to vary. We have worked closely with some of the other basketball leagues in other countries and help them to set up, probably not the full bubble experience, but to try to put as many protocols in place so that they can continue their season. Some have been able to do that successfully. Others have had to stop. In Japan, they decided to hold off. In the Philippines, they were able to complete one season. And the testing is really the most important thing, and to make sure that you have great and reliable testing so that you can just keep track of how the virus is spreading and whether it's safe to bring people together for practices and to bring them to games. And in some cases, it's simply not safe to do so. And in those cases, it shouldn't continue. You can't take the risk. We have to all be focused on the long game here and the humanity of the sports, so that we can make sure that people are put in difficult situations and forced to do things that put them in jeopardy.
Mr. Jayaraj, did the IPL, I wouldn't say completely eradicate the losses, but did it mitigate some of it? Did you, I mean, this country was starved of cricket, and we all know how much India loves cricket. So did you, what was that like, and the consumption pattern of the viewers? How did that change post-pandemic? Or we still cannot call it post-pandemic, but yeah, post-lockdown maybe.
Yeah, I think just echoing what Scott just said, one of the things, and I'll just come back to the question you asked, Miha, in a moment. I think one of our learnings has been, look, what worked in IPL can actually, from a broadcast point of view, also has helped us broadcast the ISL and in future when we have the Kabaddi League, etc. And I think that learning is actually great. While every sport will have some unique sort of phases, I think transferring the learning has been quite important. Coming back to how did it work? Actually, I think and I was just reflecting on a report by some of the media luminaries just a few days ago. What they said is that IPL actually not only invigorated certainly the sports ecosystem, but certainly the media landscape changed dramatically. From the period March till the time that IPL was around, IPL started, it was looking doom and gloom like it looked for every other industry. I think IPL revitalized it considerably, both commercially as well as from a viewership point of view. It was not only extremely commercially successful, it was also our highest ever viewed tournament ever. So in that sense, it really worked well. And you're right, we can't call it post-pandemic because we don't know what's going to happen over the next few weeks and months. But it does look like at least, and there's this meme floating around, if you haven't seen, that says, since the time that IPL started, the virus sort of started disappearing in India. It's very, very spooky. Of course, I won't claim all credit for that, but it's true. It's certainly re-energized India, I would feel.
Mr. Garlic, I've got to ask you this about, for the Premier League. I mean, it would have been a huge challenge for you, given that England had the highest number of deaths at that time in Europe. And then that dilemma of when do you say, it's basically financial implications versus health and safety. So at what point did you feel like, okay, we need to really get started with the league? We need to start the season again.
Yeah. We always prioritise the health and safety of the players and the staff and any fans that might be going back in. From our point of view, it wasn't about what's the financial cost and what's the health benefit. It was always the health benefit that came first. But we focused on, as I say, getting the restarter. Sorry, I've got some real bad feedback coming through my. I don't know if anybody else can hear.
No. Is there an echo?
There seems to be an echo.
Okay. Can you get through it, or should I get someone to? Because
let me try.
I'm sitting in an extremely large room with no one around me. So I hope they can hear me. And
no, as I think from our point of view, it was about prioritising the health and safety of the players and the staff before we got restarted. And we wouldn't have restarted if it wasn't safe to do so. Because you're dealing with an unknown disease and infections, there's always going to be some risks, but it's about mitigating those risks, and it's about coming up with a safe solutions. Because the only safe way of ensuring there was never going to be any issues would be not to play at all, and I don't think that was viable, and that's certainly not what we agreed from a league point of view, where we made a commitment that when it was safe to do so, we would restart. And clearly, we've been in a fortunate position where, whilst the losses have been suffered because we haven't had fans in the stadium for 18 months. Those losses have been offset. and mitigated against. And unfortunately, we've been able to support the other clubs in the English pyramid and the women's game as well, to ensure that everybody got their season completed.
Mr. Soni, we just saw PSL being postponed because of the rising cases, right? How does ICC approach something like that? We can't hear you, sir. You're on mute.
Sorry, I did get stuck. Meha, could you mute your mic?
Okay, so I have been told the echo is not from here.
May I just intervene, Meha, if you don't mind? I request all the panelists, if there's any other device that you're accessing this platform from, you'll have to keep it on mute or put it off, because if there's any device that is operational or using the same platform next to you, there will be definitely an echo. Meha, you're on mute.
There is a laptop right next to me, which probably has this thing on. I don't know.
Okay, so request every device that is accessed.
I'm so sorry for this.
Let me quickly answer the actually move to the next. So I think it's extremely important for everybody to realize that in the case of risk mitigation, it's not a linear curve. So we, for example, right now given a series, which is a bilateral series, let's say with 2 teams, versus, let's say, a World Cup, which has 16 teams coming from 16 different countries, right, into one country, the risks associated with that are exponentially larger and way different. And I think that those are the complexities that all of us right now are going through and understanding each day better than the day before as to what needs to be done. So for us right now, learning from what is happening under the various leagues, learning from what India is doing currently, and I think BCCI has done a great job. Post this from IPL will be very key in terms of learnings before we look at what are the protocols we'll have to follow for the T20 later in the year. But getting 16 teams from different countries with their quarantine protocols, with their risk factors into a place, so getting them into the country, then making sure that the tournament happens and making sure that the players can then get back to their respective countries is an enormous challenge. And a challenge where everybody needs to come together and everybody needs to realize that there is a high probability that things may not go as per plan. And to have the faith that everybody is trying to do his best to make things happen, given the uncertainty which still exists. Sorry, you're on mute, man.
Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Opportunity and adversity, that's what that seems to be the mantra since the last year, since this pandemic began. Mr. Jayaraj, there have been key innovations really for the broadcaster as well, isn't that so? I mean, remote production, you don't require as many people on the venue now. So what have been some of those key innovations that have sort of organically risen through this?
I think a couple of things that I would like to think about. I think I'm still getting a bit of feedback. So a couple of things I'd like to highlight. First is, of course, this whole audio part. I think it was incredible because to marry it and execute it at that split second when a particular event happens on ground and it's put into broadcast, when it's not actually live, is quite incredible. So you would actually feel that there is a real crowd. They're cheering for a boundary that's been hit. versus a wicket that's fallen. So that was quite good. The other thing which we innovated was around fan walls. So through our digital platform, what we did is, depending upon how many people were voting and cheering for a particular player, we put that noise out in the stadium. So this is like hundreds of millions of people sitting in any part of the world and saying, okay, look, we cheer for Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma or any of them, and their name would sort of echo in the stadium. That was quite good because otherwise the players are not used to playing in an empty stadium. But with some of these innovations, I think we did a few things. I think the most important one for us was realizing that, look, especially if you have multiple broadcasts happening, what would happen is, if you would think of the IPL, it's one bubble which the cricketers play in, and then and all the federation people, and then they go on and the bubble sort of gets broken. But in terms of broadcast, what happens is you have one, and then you have, say, you're broadcasting something else, right? So the number of people that you need had to be very, very dynamic, and you had to plan. Say if you have 6 or 7 tournaments happening, people would just not be able to go home, right? People who are in the bubble would have to continue to stay in the bubble. So some of those things, and how do we flexibly work with it? Some of the things that you talked about, remote production, really interesting idea. But for that, again, you had to create studios which could handle that. You needed to have fiber optics. So these are not things that we would have normally done. But having said that, doing some of these things has A, helped the viewer experience substantially, and B, it's also helped us get technologically a lot more savvy in terms of how we can manage some of these things, and of course make it work very, very commercial. You're mute, Neha.
I am so sorry for that. Seems to be a recurring theme in this session. These are questions from the media. This question is for Mr. Scott Levy. Would you agree that hosting the NBA games in Europe would present a different set of challenge going forward as compared to hosting the regular NBA session in the US post-pandemic?
I think hosting any sporting event in any capacity is a unique event. So whether we're doing it in New York or Paris or in Beijing, it is going to require a completely different point of view. We are going to have to install multiple new protocols, and we're going to make sure it's a safe environment for our players, for our teams, and for our fans. I just hope that we can. We play games in Europe and Asia and Latin America every year. And of course, we can't do that at the current moment. So hopefully that will change soon, and we can once again do our global games international.
Mr. Soni, how sustainable are the current COVID protocol mandates, especially for emerging sports and leagues? So you're on mute again.
I think maybe the right word is not how sustainable they are, but how necessary they are. And the necessity will determine the sustainability in terms of time. I think as both Richard and Scott from us are center concern, the safety of the stakeholders. And as long as that is the centerpiece, that will have to determine what are the protocols that follow to ensure that we mitigate the risk.
Right, I've just been informed that we need to go on with the session. It seems to be the most interesting session this afternoon. So let's also get Mr. Garlick and Mr. Levy's thoughts on some of the key innovations that you have found, sirs, when during this whole process of trying to get sports back into the league. Mr. Garlick, if I could begin with you, what have been those key innovations?
From my point of view.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Mia. Can you unmute? Thank you. I think there's been some interesting technology innovations from our point of view. I know from a broadcasting point of view, they've had to be innovative in the way in which they do interviews and the way in which they get the content that they need, not just the match, but the pre and post match content. So there's been some interesting innovations around that. One of the things that we looked at when we were looking at the protocols was the amount of time players on the field actually were within 2 meters of each other. And we did a whole project working out how long they spent within each other, analysing all 380 games from season 1920. And we worked out that on average, players spent less than a minute in close contact with each other, which meant that we could prove to the government and to the health authorities that playing outdoors was pretty safe. It did depend on which position you were in, but these sort of innovations around tracking players, around we'd never thought of looking at that before. Why would we ever want to try and assess how long they spent within a meter or 2 meters of each other? So I think you're seeing innovations around technology, around tracking of players, around, as I say, around broadcasting, and I think the players have actually some of the most interesting innovations are the player celebrations when they're trying to do social distance celebrations. We saw some quite innovative goal celebrations when players scored. Rather than jumping and hugging each other, they were cognizant of the fact that they needed to stay away, and you saw some quite interesting innovations there. So I think it's across the board. There's been innovations across the board.
Mr. Levy?
It's even in a normal season, the vast majority of our fans don't attend a game in person. But during this season, of course, we had no fans. Last season we had no fans. This year we have limited number of fans. So we had to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make sure that we could connect the fans to the game, even though they couldn't attend. And we created this virtual fan experience where more than 300 fans each game appear live on 17-foot video boards surrounding the court. And during the whole season, we had 60,000 fans join, including a few cameos from people like Barack Obama, Lil Wayne, Shaquille O'Neal, and as well as players, families, and more examples. So, I think the innovation on our side has really been focused on greater fan engagement. And we want to make sure that whether you're able to attend the arena or whether you're watching from home or whether you're in a country that's in a completely different time zone, you're able to feel like you're part of the game. And now that we have some fans back in the arena, we're trying to figure out more ways to engage those fans. So we've added more camera angles, additional audio feeds, influencer integration, and we've really expanded our digital and social offerings to be more customizable and a personal second screen experience. So we spend a lot of time listening to our fans, and each of our platforms has a unique tone and specialty. So we want to tailor our content by platform based on what users would expect and enjoy. And that goes for payment solutions, it goes for the local language, the type of content that we're delivering. And hopefully everybody listening here actually will jump on and follow the NBA as well, and let us know what you like to see, so we could deliver the best content to you as well.
That was well plugged, Mr. Levy. That was well plugged. But Mr. Sahni, this is a question from the media. This question is: football, cricket, and basketball have made successful comebacks in a COVID world. Can the same model be replicated for contact sports as well, like kabaddi and martial arts, etc.?
I think there have been there have been sports which are evaluating that, given the amount of time the respective players have been in a bio bubble to be able to deliver that. So there have been cases where this is being tried and is being continuously looked at various spots. And I think that will be something that we will see. The rules will be different, right? I mean, we've had to also do the similar analysis that Richard said as to how much time do players spend next to each other within 2 meters of that. But there are sports wherein this is a reality. It's a contact sport. So in that particular case, the function really is, if the players are in a particular bio bubble, then can they be able to do that? You know, you look at, for example, the team players themselves vis-a-vis the interacting with the other team. So that is definitely being currently evaluated and protocols being set for various sports. So I think we will see that happening. Again, it's going to be dynamic. So I do feel that there is light even for contact sports. I genuinely do feel that. I mean, there are sports which are already taking place. If I'm not wrong, you have the UFC as well as, you know, sports like that currently doing events. So that clearly proves that. Meha, I need to apologize. I was given to understand this is like a 50-minute session, and I planned my next meeting for which I'm already 10 minutes late. So I really want to thank CII yourself for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this. And, you know, of course, to my fellow panelists, I look forward to meeting them in person in the near future.
I'm not going to tell. I'm not going to say it. Somebody else has to say it.
That's it. Thank you so much, Mr. Soni, for taking the time out. And in fact, I've been told that I can wrap this session up. So thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time out. I know you all are very busy. You've been leading the way in how to successfully get sport and international tournaments back on track. And it has been the most informative session on that topic. So once again, thank you, Mr. Jayaraj, Mr. Soni, Mr. Levy, and Mr. Garlick. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks.
All the best for your CII-Scorecard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Discussions are really interesting. And once again, it's funny, Mr. Scott Levy, Mr. Anil Jayaraj, you know, with such powerful minds at work, we're sure getting sports back on track in an even more accelerated manner. Thank you so much. And I apologize for the echoing sound that came during the panel discussion. And it's a humble request to all the panelists who will be joining in to see to that you only use one device for this particular platform. If there is any other device that's operating the same platform in the same premise, there will be an echoing sound. So request you to please only stick to one device. Thank you so much for that. And it was definitely, yes, past 1 year has been quite tough, and we are looking at getting sports back in track even better. Cricket, football, all of these sports have come back, and the other sports also would be in the course of time, because as the powerful mind spoke since this afternoon, there are plans underway, and that will be aggressively worked upon. So once again, thank you to each and every panelist on the panel discussion today. Our next panel discussion is on mega sports events in India. And for the same, all the delegates need to go to the CII Hive lobby that's on the main page and click on the conference section at the top panel on your screen. I'll repeat this. You need to go to the CII Hive lobby that's on the main page and click on the conference section at the top panel on your screen and kindly join session 3 that focuses on mega sports events in India. Once again, I'll repeat, session 3, mega sports events in India. See you on the other side.